boing, boing, boing. It's Keeper of the Lost Cities, the graphic novel, too. I have Shannon Messenger with me. She's a New York Times best-selling author. But before we get started, he grabbed her arms to steady her. It's okay, Sophie. I'm here to help you. We've been looking for you for 12 years. That's on the back of the first book I've got from Keeper of the Lost Souls from Shannon Messenger. How are you doing, Shannon?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yes, I read the book. Here we go. What are the challenges you
I
face?
love it.
Yeah. What are the challenges you face as a novelist adapting Keeper of the Lost Cities Part 1? And did you learn anything in the process that made you approach the adaptation of Part 2 any differently?
You know, the tricky thing with graphic novels is that they are a completely different format because you're telling the story visually now. And you really aren't going to have the amount of interior monologue that you can have in a prose book without it feeling weird. You know, in a prose book, of course, we're in the character's head. We get to hear everything they're thinking. And in a graphic novel, it gets really weird if you're putting too many text boxes. And so um, I definitely learned that it's better to embrace the fact that they're different media and change things than it is to try to fit it and have it be exact. I really learned, especially in the later half of the book, I really learned that it was better to just rewrite things. Like there were the adaptation, the original adaptation that the artist worked with, when we were really watching it all come together, when I got the panels and everything, it was just like, this isn't coming across right. Like, we're not capturing the heart of this scene. And so I ended up having to go in and kind of rewrite a lot of it with my editor. We went, and it was funny because I'd be like, I remember this line. I know this line. I wrote this line, but this line doesn't work anymore. Let's just, and it's that thing that you do even as when you're editing a draft. It's like they call it kill your darlings, and I had to kind of do that of like, look, it's not worth saving this line. Let's put in a line that works instead. And so it's fun because you really, it is still very much the same book that you're going to get the same exact feel, but line for line, it is quite, there's quite a lot of differences.
Speaking of differences, I don't think there's any difference. Sophie Foster has a secret. She's a telepath, someone who hears the thoughts of everyone around her. That sounds like a typical 12-year-old anyway. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could all read minds, right? Sure.
Now, the artwork on Part 2 is done by a different graphic artist. How would you describe your collaboration on the new look, and how did it impact the storytelling?
Yeah, so we had to have two artists because graphic novels are daunting amount workloads, especially these ones which are quite thick. And so unless we wanted to have like a 4 or 5 year gap between part one and part two, the only way to do this was to have the second artist be able to get started while the first artist was still at work. And so when we had this conversation and this realization, I said, okay, I want to make sure that the styles match each other. I don't want it to be that like you're looking at them side by side and you're like that I would not think that that's the same book. I wanted to make sure that there was a harmony there, but at the same time, I also wanted to make sure that each artist was able to draw their way and draw what they saw in their head, because I feel like that's the way that you get the best art is when they're kind of drawing what they're picturing versus like, oh, well, the other artist drew this scene this way, and so I have to draw it exactly that way. And so it was really trying to strike that balance of, obviously we wanted there to be consistency, we wanted there to feel, like obviously we are reading part two of part one and these two halves go together, but also really let the artist draw her way. And what was great about this particular artist for part two is that she is extremely detail oriented and was really able to cram so much detail into these little panels. I seriously don't know how she did it, because she had some scenes that were really going to, I was nervous for her, like, how are you going to do a scene with 12 characters in a panel? Like, how are you going to do that? And she did it and managed to fit all of that kind of detail, all of, some of the sets, so to speak, that Sophie goes to, they were very elaborate, and she was able to fit all of that in and capture it in a way that was just truly stunning. And it has made for an absolutely beautiful book that I can't wait for readers to get to page through and just bask in the beauty of it.
Speaking of illustration, now you graduated from USC School of Cinematic Arts. You studied art, screenwriting, television production, but you said I need to write. Is it what happened between writing books and being an illustrator?
So I realized as I went through art school that the skill that I am missing, that it does not seem to be something that I can acquire through no matter how much I practice, is I am not good at drawing from my imagination. Even though I can see it so clearly in my head, when I go to draw it, it doesn't show up on the page the way that I'm picturing it. I can only draw something if I can see it. If I have my hand in front of me, I can sit there and I can draw every detail of my hand. Makes me about as useful as a camera. But, and so it was just becoming very frustrating because I kept thinking, okay, if I just practice enough, if I just take enough art classes, I will get to this point. And eventually I had to realize I just don't think that's a skill that I have, because I saw people who had it. And in my art classes, they would just get an idea and pick up their pencil and start drawing. And I was just like, how do you do that? What is this magic? And what I also discovered was that when I used words, I didn't have that same problem. I had what was in my head come out on the page. I could get people to see it. I could get people to feel what I wanted them to feel. And so it was just like, why am I laboring under all of this frustration for art pieces of art that I don't feel proud of because they're never as cool as what I wanted them to be, when I could switch over to something that I feel proud of, that gets the reaction that I am going for. And so I switched to words. But I was growing up in California, so of course you end up in Hollywood, screenwriting, all of that. And I just didn't like how collaborative Hollywood is. I understand why it is, because movies are millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're not going to just put that in the hand of one person. And it also takes an entire team. You have to have a cameraman and a sound, but too many cooks in the kitchen for me. Apparently, I'm a control freak.
I like that. Now, what is a good entry point for those readers who may not be familiar with the series?
Obviously, starting at the first book is always the best way in. So whether, if you're going to read the prose novels, starting at book one is a good way to go. Or if you're reading the graphic novel, it's great to start with part one. But we did decide, because we knew there was going to be a gap between the books, and also we knew that people are going to come in at any point they want. So we did add a section, I think we called it like previously in Keeper of the Lost Cities, into this graphic novel. So you get about 3 pages that'll tell you everything you need to know so that you can come into this book and not be confused. The only reason why I say it's better to start with part one is because spoilers. Obviously, that previously in Keeper of the Lost Cities series spoils book one for you. There's no surprises. You're not going to, everything's been told to you. So it's better to get to live it and experience it as you go. But if you start with book two, we made sure that you will not be, or part two, I should say, we made sure that you will not be confused or lost, and you will be able to dive right in.
Definitely. Been speaking with Shannon Messenger. We're talking about Keeper of the Lost Cities, the graphic novel, part two. Shannon, where can we get the book?
So it should be available wherever books are sold. So obviously your favorite online retailers, Barnes and Noble, independent bookstores are always a great place to go because they support local businesses and all of that. So if you have a great independent bookseller, I highly recommend that. Or there's a website called bookshop.org that kind of teams up all those indies. So if you happen to live in a town that doesn't have an independent bookseller, you can have them shipped to you. So, but really anywhere books are sold, go. Just obviously pick your favorite retailer, and that's, pick whatever book you want. I'd love it if it's mine.
Yeah, definitely is yours. It'd make a great holiday gift, wouldn't
I mean, I think so, but I might be a little bit
it?
biased.
Shannon, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.